Well, hi, friends, and welcome to NC Family's weekly update for the week ending Friday, December the 12th. We're closing in on Christmas and the New Year, so hang tight with us. We got a few items of interest that took place this week, one at the General Assembly and one that's still going on in the U.S. Congress, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But I'm here with Jerry Royal. Jerry, good to see you.
Always good to be together.
Well, so on Wednesday of this week, there was a select committee, a special committee meeting at the North Carolina General Assembly, the North Carolina House Select Committee on Oversight and Reform, and they met to hold a special hearing regarding the Chapel Hill-Carrboro city school system's implementation or lack thereof of Senate Bill 49, the Parents' Bill of Rights, which the General Assembly passed in 2023. And schools are supposed to be implementing these provisions, several of which were the subject of quite a boisterous and active debate yesterday. Jerry, before I recognize you, I just want to say this is an important event that took place, and it is actually one of the top news stories on national Fox News. They got a hold of it, and because of the subject matter that was discussed and debated, and probably to some degree the manner in which that was done, it has made national headlines, and it's important not just for that reason, but for the substance of what was discussed. So, Jerry, you were at the committee meeting yesterday. You heard from beginning to end the discussion and debate from committee members and also from leaders within the Chapel Hill-Carrboro school system. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it really was. I don't know. I hadn't thought about saying this, but one of the interesting things that was happening in this committee was a lot of times we work on laws for weeks, months, years before they pass, and when they do pass, sadly, the reality is sometimes they're handed to people to implement those laws, and nobody ever really knows what is happening as far as the implementation. In this case,
they know.
because, I mean, it relates, the bill is the Parents' Bill of Rights. And I think people have been concerned about what's been happening in some schools, in some classrooms, obviously not all. And so this bill was an attempt to bring accountability to the school systems in North Carolina to say, this is what our expectations are, this is what the law now says. But there was an understanding ever since this was 2023 when this law was passed, that in certain school systems, and in this case specifically the Chapel Hill-Carrboro school system, there was a clear understanding that the implementation was not what people expected it to be. And another big part of the picture here, which was hard to miss yesterday, as you said, I don't know what word, I know you said boisterous. A lot of issues, there's a lot of emotion. I don't remember maybe in 25 years where certain issues, obviously like sanctity of human life, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of zeal about the issue. It was at a pitched peak yesterday because, as they said at the beginning, this is about our children. This is what's happening in our school system, and we're very concerned, and we passed a law, and now we want to have some accountability. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so let's drill down into some of the specifics of the law of Senate Bill 49, things that it directed and requires school systems across the state to do and also not to do. One of which is the bill prohibits instruction on gender identity, sexual activity, or sexuality in kindergarten through fourth grade. So to ensure that when students are in school, especially students of younger ages, that they're not getting bombarded with inappropriate materials and instruction, especially materials and instruction that their parents would significantly object to. The bill also requires schools to notify parents prior to any changes in the use of a name or pronoun for a student and changing the student's name in school records so that what we've understand has taken place is that a child may be suffering from gender dysphoria or gender confusion. They go to school, they want to identify as the opposite sex. the school system goes along with it, and so they basically refer to the child by a different name at school and different pronouns at school than the child is referred to at home. And oftentimes when this happens, and hopefully it's fairly rare, but it does happen probably more than we would like to believe that it does, but then the parents find out, because they haven't been informed by the school, that the school's using different names and pronouns for the child at school. And so I think in one instance what was cited here was a notification came home to the parents that actually referred to the child by a different name. And the parents are like, what in the world's going on here? And so that's the kind of situation that we're talking about. And the at least one leader, the chairman of the school board in Chapel Hill-Carrboro, had made some very public statements a number of months ago that they were not going to comply with certain sections of the law, albeit these two sections of the statute. But then they claimed during this hearing on Wednesday that they were complying with the law. So, Jerry, it was, there was a lot of back and forth. There were certainly different perspectives that were presented, but lots of very pointed questions by the chair of the committee, Representative Brendan Jones, and others on the committee, Representative Mike Sheetzolt, as well as some others, about what is actually going on here, because what we're hearing and what we have evidence of is one thing, which is non-compliance with the law, but then the leaders of the school system are saying, no, we're complying with the law.
Right. And as you say, John, it was literally hours of back and forth, questions, responses. The constant response, like you say, from the superintendent of their schools as well as their school board chair was, we understand that we're to follow the law. We have been following the law. We will continue to follow the law. And on the other side of the picture, in John, the cases you just mentioned, that bill had many provisions in it. But these are two of the critical provisions that were being pointed out. And not to get too much into the details, but like you say, the school board chair, they had hit quotes from him. They actually had video of him in school board meeting about his not agreeing with certain parts of the bill. Well, they said, well, but we ended up as a school board passing all these provisions except for some into our policy, and we address those other parts somewhere else. And they're kind of going, wait a minute, you're telling me you will have followed the law. But they pointed, in the case of the second example you mentioned, John, about parents being notified if something's happening with the interaction with their child in the school as it relates to their identity. And a parent had written, they had put up on the screen an email from a parent saying, this has happened, I was not notified. So that was a clear example of where that provision was not being followed. And it was one where even though they were saying they were following, and even though they had the statements that maybe they didn't agree with it, that they were still saying they followed. That was one example, excuse me, you mentioned, John, but the other one, both had, but even maybe higher emotions were some of the materials.
Yes.
Excuse me, and I'm sure y'all have heard about this happening in school board meetings. It happened this week in the General Assembly, where they read from materials where you're thinking, wait a minute, for adults, it's problematic. It's very troubling. But for children, that's why there were specific provisions in the Parents' Bill of Rights. This is not even going to, not just notifying parents if it was there. This is not to be part of anything that's being offered in our school systems. And I don't know, do we want to even get into the details of
a couple of examples, and we'll keep it rated G,
right.
But a couple of examples that Chairman Jones, Brendan Jones, the chair of the committee, cited, and he had the books in hand. One was Santa's Husband, The True Story of Mr. and Mr. Claus. And this was a book that apparently was linked to, at the very least, on the Chapel Hill-Carrboro school system's webpage as acceptable reading. There was also another book, It Isn't Rude to Be Nude, and there were kind of cartoonish images, but of completely nude individuals, including adults, in this book. And that was, apparently appropriate for children in their school system to access, because it was linked to as another one of those materials. Representative Jones, opened these books. He also read from another book, which I'm not going to repeat because it would be non-rated G. But he read from these books. He showed the pictures and had complete evidence that these were materials that the school system was, promoting as something that the children should have access to.
Right. Which, and going back to, I guess, my first thought about this, it was, the emotions were high, but it was encouraging that we had a good example of a strong, important law that was passed in our state. Instead of people just hearing, well, some are following it, some are not, the legislature, in this case, saw an opportunity to say, we need to hold people accountable. We need to let them know we are following what's going on.
Yep.
And you do need to follow the law. It's not an option. And they kept pointing out that's part of what all these people were sworn into office saying, I will follow the laws and the Constitution of the state of North Carolina. And as I say, there was a lot of evidence that made it sound like in this case, that was not what's been happening. So it was difficult, quite honestly, just to be in the room because of the tension.
Yeah,
but
sure.
at the same time, you go, that's what a lot of life is when you have to address difficult situations. It's, and people could argue, well, did we do it? And was it done exactly the right way? Well, there were different people, personalities, but overall, it was saying North Carolina has passed an important law, and this is an example of how there needs to be accountability.
Yeah. Well, like you said at the outset, Jerry, you can work really hard, and we work really hard to get good laws passed with your help. But if those laws are not implemented properly, are not respected and put into action, then they have no effect. And in this case, there's a very clear evidence that this school system was not following the law. They may have cherry-picked certain parts of the law that they didn't have problems with, but they certainly ignored or left out other parts, hence the controversy. And Chairman Jones and other members of the committee made it very clear that they would use every power and authority that they have to ensure compliance, not only with this law, but with other laws that they have passed and will pass in the future. And so I think it was far more than just a shot across the bow. It was a definitive statement that says, especially as it relates to the Parents' Bill of Rights, that school systems need to follow the law. They need to implement the law as it was intended by the General Assembly, or there will be consequences as a result of inaction or inappropriate action. And so, yeah, it was a very, very strong, heated, but important committee meeting that did take place. So, Jerry, thanks for being there. Also, just very quickly, a quick update on Wednesday. The United States House of Representatives passed the National Defense Authorization Act. We have mentioned before that the Lumbee Recognition Act that would grant the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina in the eastern part of the state full federal recognition, the Lumbee Recognition Act is still in the NDAA bill. And this is a massive national defense bill, but it was used as a vehicle to, and I'm sure the Lumbee Act is not the only non-related defense provision in the bill, but that is still part of this bill. We have mentioned before the importance and our advocacy to our members of our congressional delegation, and especially the two senators, U.S. senators from North Carolina, Tom Tillis and Ted Budd, our advocacy to them to include, should this provision pass in the NDAA or in any other bill, that they include language that would expressly prohibit the Lumbee tribe from having a right to gamble should they gain full federal recognition. And that is a right that is inherent typically with full federal recognition, so it would require a provision that would expressly prohibit the tribe from having gambling. Should this Lumbee Recognition Act pass, in the National Defense Authorization Act or any other act for that matter, without that express language prohibiting them from gambling, it will start the process toward paving the way for a massive gambling casino development, or more than just one, along the I-95 corridor in eastern North Carolina. So there's still time to reach out to Senators Tillis and Budd. There's a link below the video that you can click on to go access more background information about this. And also it includes their phone numbers so that you can reach out to them directly and ask them to make sure that this provision that would expressly prohibit the Lumbee tribe from having the right to gamble in North Carolina is included in the Lumbee Recognition Act provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act. I know that's a lot of words and sounds complicated, but the message is clear that this provision to prohibit the Lumbee tribe from having gambling needs to be included in the Lumbee Recognition Act provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act.
All right. And I know we've mentioned it before, even though there's a lot of impetus behind this, I think there's a lot of bipartisan support, which typically happens with defense bills. As you mentioned, John, I think it's thousands of pages. But what can and needs to happen, this would be an amendment that could be added to that bill.
Right.
It's not too late, even though it's gone through the House. We don't know what's going to happen on the Senate side, but that's where there's an opportunity to add this amendment.
Yeah.
So we would love to, as we've seen happen in the past, we've mentioned before, where there's been a movement on this full federal recognition, and this provision was added. So we would love to work together again for that to happen this year.
Yeah, and I just want to be very clear. Our issue is not with full federal recognition for the Lumbee tribe. There are a lot of benefits that the tribe would gain as a result of that. The concern that we have and the objection that we have is that through years of tribal laws and congressional actions, that gambling has become an inherent right of federally recognized Indian tribes. And there is a fix for that. And again, it's the inclusion of this express prohibitory language in the Lumbee Recognition Act so that they would not have the right to pursue gambling, but they would gain all the other benefits that come along with federal recognition or full federal recognition. So that is our appeal. So thank you. As with this issue and everything else that we work on, we simply cannot do what we do. We can't do all that we do without your prayers, without your activity, and without your financial support. And as we near the end of 2025, in the beginning of a new year, I just want to make an appeal to you all. If you have supported the Family Policy Council financially this year, thank you. As we're nearing the year end and you're considering year-end giving, please consider another gift to NC Family to help position us well to enter into the new year and to finish out 2025. If you have yet to make a donation to the Family Policy Council this year, we would encourage you to do so. There is a link below the video to our donate page. There are a variety of different ways that people can give. You can send us a check. You can go online and give through credit card or directly linked to your bank account. You can also transfer shares of stock to the Family Policy Council or make a gift through a donor advised funds. There's even additional ways that folks can give. So click on that donate button and review that. And we would ask respectfully for your prayerful consideration of financial support to partner with us to enable us to do the work that we do that is so important in our state. We want to represent the families of North Carolina well. Of course, we want to represent biblical principles where our culture intersects with public policy and politics, and this is an opportunity for you to partner with us to do that.
Amen.
So, Jerry, any other thoughts?
No. We just, again, appreciate y'all working together with us.
Absolutely. It is a partnership, and we're grateful for your joining together with us in all of these important endeavors. So with that, I want to thank you for tuning in this week, and we will look forward to speaking to you next week, and we will be then a week closer to Christmas and the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026. So God bless you all. Thanks so much, and may God bless you and your families.